Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. All right. Great game. I might start by finishing the game against the maximum level computer. We're gonna get this review in. It wasn't quite as accurate as I thought it might. A lot of mistakes and inaccuracies and all that. Not all that many in the major blunder category. So this is the type of game you want to review. You get a second opinion. You know, you have a serious medical decision to make. You have a serious medical decision to make. It's good to get a second opinion sometime, often. And this isn't as serious as a serious medical decision necessarily, but I want to get an opinion. Get an opinion from Lichess. So I thought that game was a little bit drier, a little bit more accurate than the initial report. So we'll just let Lichess calculate things out and consult with their analysis in a bit here. It just looks like after move 5, there's a stretch here where both sides had some inaccuracies. There's a blunder hanging out there, so maybe the game wasn't quite as accurate as I thought, but we'll definitely get a second opinion so that we can be sure. From the game chart, you see even with these bumps here, +3, okay, but neither side really was running away with it until maybe here you could say, or here. Yeah, so it was a late breaking game, a well contested game. My opponent played well, I played well, and let's review it. This sometimes leads to the 4 knights opening. This is the 3 knights opening, and most common is knight f6, but bishop, what did my opponent play? Bishop c5 is also very common as well, so there's nothing wrong with that. This is book, and queen e7 reacts to this. One thing black could do instead, just capture the pawn on d4, and then after queen captures on d4, material will be even. It's not to get too ahead of ourselves to believe that white has already dropped the equivalent. To believe that white has already really dropped a knight to a pawn, but that this is going to win back the minor piece side of that. So for black, queen e7 is just a little bit too optimistic. It's too optimistic, and now white has some sort of advantage. I frittered it away with queen d5. Yeah. Maybe this game wasn't quite as accurate as I thought. With a lot of misses and mistakes here. Not that many blunders, but I had this different. After queen to a3, my thought was, for black play, b4, no? Does white have a saving resource here? This is b4, forking queen and knight. Where on earth is my queen gonna go? Maybe if queen a6 and then captures on c3, queen captures on c6 check, and is there a good way for black to cover the check without losing at least a rook? Maybe not. At some point, black can play pawn takes b2 to make sure his pawn on c3 gets liquidated. Pawn takes b2 check, and then just king takes b2 without a follow-up threat. So Torch is considering, this all goes back to queen a3. Torch is considering queen to a3 as the best move, because these reasonably advanced tactics don't quite work out for black, and I think that's because of the move queen to a6. Lose the knight, but win the rook on a8. Interesting. That would have been wild, though. But my opponent played a better move. By the book, this is a better move. Queen for queen and doubling white's pawns. Maybe making white's king less safe, although the king is actually pretty darn safe here with the number of pieces clogging the c file, and that there are patches that white can throw in place if things get risky, like bishop to d3. The b file's open, but without a dark squared bishop on the board to take advantage by way of a move like bishop takes a3, or even if there were queen takes a3 in some manner, and that would be check. Bishop takes a3 check, queen takes a3 check, and maybe black has something going, but those pieces are not on the board. So I'd say white has a safe king here, despite a little bit of error. Castle's king side. Seems like a fine move to me. I don't really want to go over it in detail. And here I played, well, not exactly sure what's going on, but the rooks need to connect. So bishop to d3 keeps things together for white. It's a tall pawn bishop, but a pretty darn good one. And sort of allows this covert doubling of rooks on the d file unchallenged. Take advantage of a non-winning tactic. That means it's a tactic that doesn't win material, but this one clarifies the position and wins in a strategic way. Maybe not all the way to winning, but definitely now we know what's going on here. This is a two rook endgame. Two rooks against two rooks and a number of pawns versus two rooks and a number of pawns. Let's see how it goes. So my opponent protects the, you would say that somewhat loose e-pawn. This could be viewed as loose, and I did put a second rook on it, so I agreed, but this is to induce the move pawn to f6, and then maybe shimmy to the d file, find a safe square to spread out, and then eventually get our other rook in place to have two rooks on the 7th file where they can completely hog and eat up all the pawns that are there. Maybe some attacks against black's king, who knows. But we're way ahead of ourselves. Right now, all it is that black has a really solid pawn chain extending from g7 to e5, and white will have an advantage in terms of piece coordination. White's two rooks will be coordinated better and earlier than black's. So that would be one way of tackling this, and now that I recall, indeed in the game I thought it better to put the e rook on e4 and probe for weaknesses along the half open h file and the g file, while also placing my rook to e4 with tempo because of the shot on b4. The shot against b4. So black repairs, black keeps b4 protected, and we're just gonna probe for weaknesses. This pawn is pinned, and maybe white's second rook can get there. Cause black's e8 rook to move to g8, and white has nothing more than black is a little bit defensive or crowded, or what's the word? passive. Uh, this game is, I mean, like the progress bar indicates, this game is, for the most part, just dead even. But it's a matter of trying to make grape from grapefruit juice. It's an old saying. Trying to squeeze water from a lemon, squeeze water from a rock. I don't know about squeeze water from a rock. It doesn't really apply here, but let's see. Maybe the computer has this as even, but what could black do other than follow this loss of a pawn? Let's see that the computer considers this position even as well. So this would be a good time to switch over to the analysis window and see how is this position with white ahead a full pawn considered an even position by the progress bar. Now it's bumped up to 0.1 in favor of white. What I'm looking for here is a tactic for black that might regain the pawn. That's not it. And king e6, rook g4, rook h8, h3, king f7. Now it changes. And I'm critical of Komodo, or is it Torch 4's analysis here? I'm critical of Torch 4's analysis. White's ahead of full pawn, and there's this. We look ahead on this. White's still ahead of full pawn after black's 43rd move. So we found that the computer is in error here. Right? We also have the black king cut off from the H rank where white's passed pawn is located, and the black rook is not going to be able to stop it very well, at least not yet. Maybe with pawn to f5. But really, black should be aiming to get onto the 8th rank and then block. White has the right idea. And it looks like g4 is a bad move here. Just keep the d4, the g2 pawn where it is, because he's so very strong, as protected by the rook at g6, keeping things solid by protecting f3. And Torch has restored faith with king to d2, suggesting king to d2 here, activating white's king. And there are too many babysitting jobs for black to win this. The rook has to sort of keep an eye on h6. The king is here trying to convert his e5 and f5 pawns, and the white king is just going to come in and maybe follow some route towards threatening or capturing, or both, the pawns on the queen side here. King to b2 might make sense too. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's one move quicker if we're sure that capturing a5 is good. If that's definitely the way to go. the game, here in the game, Torch finds a saving a move for black with e4. Black's 35th move, e4. F takes e makes sense. F takes g4 makes sense. And then the white's rook is doing too much duty all at once. Let's go back to our practice window. So that wasn't good. Let's try king to d2. Alright, so that also leads to a win. The win in the game is a bit less accurate with the pawn move g4. My opponent didn't find the correct response, and his intuition was a naturalist intuition. It's not a bad move, but it didn't work in this situation. So to demonstrate from here on some high quality and accurate play, we show that white's going to move a pawn to g5 to take over the protection duties from his rook at g6, where the rook at g6 was protecting h6. Now that frees up this rook for a variety of checks and threats, potential pawn grabs, the most salient and obvious of which would be rook to g7, where now the protected pawn cannot be captured once the rook leaves protection of the h6 pawn because of the g5 pawn, and while also capturing rook for rook, is bad for black because that would leave white's h6 pawn now on g7 and the king not ready to retrace his steps and stop the pawn from queening in time. Gives white a full queen. I like how my opponent is threatening here. It hasn't materialized. It's not exactly in yet. It's not exactly on yet. But yeah, give black 2 moves, and it's checkmate. I think that the check on the king here is critical. Might not be necessary. Yeah, so there's a number of winning moves. Looks like 3 moves that can maintain the current win, and the strongest of which is rook to f7 check, just demonstrating the winning method. We're going to move black's king away from this nasty looking set of mate threats and promotion threats and what have you, and then just straightforward march up board. We probably should do it with the G pawn. I'm seeing here also recommended is possibly the h7 pawn is also very strong. I like the G pawn because in my opinion this is just way more flexible. The king sitting on G1, then maybe if give white 2 moves and the promotion comes with a check against black's king. This is flexible. Where's black going to attack? I mean, we can move G7, we can move H7. Either way, the other pawn is protecting the first, and either way, whichever pawn is more advanced is protected by white's f7 rook as well. So this is, long story short, white's going to promote here. Promoting with check is fine, and even saves the h pawn for perhaps my opponent resigned here. We'll check on the Lichess evaluation. Lichess found some blunders and inaccuracies as well, so interesting. A lot of inaccuracies, a couple mistakes, and actually kind of a lot of blunders too. But I felt it was a clean game, and I had fun playing it with it. The reviews didn't see it as all that accurate, but I don't think either my opponent or I have any reason to really hang our heads about this game. It was a well fought game. I'm going to finish this game in practice versus computer, and I believe that will be the remainder of this broadcast. I boxed out the progress bar again. I'm sorry. Go here, see if this is even in view. This isn't in view either. So, yeah. With one, I had the wrong window there. You gotta remember, maybe just push this a little forward. Well, I'll deal with that on my own time. But to finish this game out against within practice, I'm not gonna be going for like an immediate checkmate. So that was fairly, that was trivial, fairly easy, yeah. Supports that my opponent resigned at a respectful and point in time. It was just a respectful resignation. I think that's gonna be it for today, folks. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.